Hello and welcome to the fourth video for the Music Hum online materials for my Tuesday, April 14th class, Music Hum. I'm Brad. So we've been talking about, the musical avant-garde, especially how it came through, especially a figure like John Cage, the growth of what we maybe call the avant-garde or experimental music, trying all these different things, really pushing the boundaries of what's music, what's not music. But at the same time, if that was kind of the thread that came from the intuitiveness of Stravinsky, from the theoretical approach by Schoenberg, there was also still a strong strain of music that was taking shape. Again, Milton Babbitt is sort of the progenitor of this. By installing a doctoral program in music composition, he gained institutional support for people that were doing this hyper-intellectualized music. For want of a better term, I'll just call it academic music, The avant-garde stuff we've been talking about is experimental. This is definitely academic. Because it had strong theoretical underpinnings. These were composers that were very serious about what was behind their music, how they wrote it, what was responsible for the notes and the decisions they made. First one, we're just going to look at a couple of these guys. The first one we're going to look at is Xenakis. Okay, lived from 1922 to 2001. Born Greek, obviously, from his name. But he spent most of his life in Paris. And in fact, he was part of the Paris resistance in World War II. He studied to be an architect and worked with Le Corbusier quite a bit. But he then turned to music because he found more kinship with some of his ideas in music. And he actually liked this crossover between his architectural approach and his musical approach. And he would do a lot of things like he was responsible for an installation called the Philips Pavilion for the Philips Company in the World's Fair held in Brussels, Belgium, where he designed both the music and the shape of the pavilion itself. And let me show you what one of his scores look like, and you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. This is a piece that he wrote called Metastasis. And basically, you'll hear, I'm going to play this piece, and you'll hear that this is the score of sorts. This is how he mapped out what the violins, this is a string piece, violins and cellos and basses, what they're going to be playing through this piece. And let me play this piece and you can hear what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is Metastasis. I'm going to run it ahead a little bit because it starts very, very softly. Here we go. So you hear big masses of sound, and a very almost an architectural approach to organizing those sound masses. It's interesting. He also used aleatoric techniques like Cage was using with his chance operations. Xenakis used a lot of probability theory, especially in his later works. Again, it's that formalization. In fact, he wrote a book called Formalized Music. That draws on various mathematical principles in order to construct it. Here's another example of one of his scores. It's a piece called Pythoprakta, and again you'll see that he's very much thinking of this graphically. He was an architect. He drew things, and this is how his music then became manifest. So another composer who writes music in a similar way was a Hungarian composer called György Ligeti, or Ligeti, and oops, not Gheorghe. And I don't have the diacriticals, sorry. And he lived from 1923 to 2006, so very similar age as Xenakis. He was a composer working in Hungary, and when the communists took over, he found he could not do his music. Again, it's like the Nazis, they thought it degenerate. He didn't have the freedom, so he escaped Hungary and ultimately became a professor at the University in Hamburg, and lived comfortably there the rest of his life. Just wrote some amazing music. He employed a thing that he called micropolyphony, which was very similar to Xenakis's kind of, lines of sound, where he had a lot of instruments kind of densely interacting with each other. And I want to play you a piece of his called Lux Aeterna. I want to tell you a little bit about it in a second, but here's some Ligeti music. Okay, I'll run it ahead a little bit just so you can hear what it sounds like after it's built up a while. So yeah, this is really cool music. Now, some of you may have recognized that because Ligeti's career got a huge boost because his music was featured in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. In fact, this is the music you hear. Actually, it's a slightly different piece. When they see the monolith, you always hear this like weirdly chanting choir in the background. Well, that's György at work. And all of a sudden he became like a really cool thing to listen to. And and it's just really cool to listen to it. So anyhow, we'll be talking about some of the issues raised by these differing approaches to music in class. And I'll shut this down and I'll see you all next Tuesday. Bye.